Hello, my name is Jacco Zwetsloot. Today I am moderating this discussion for the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation in South Korea. And I'm joined by Dr. Christina Chen. Thank you for joining me today, Christina.
Thank you, Jacco.
And also joining me is Rajoli Siddharth Jayaprakash. Thank you for joining me today, Siddharth.
Thank you, Jacco.
If a significant policy divergence emerged, for example, if China moved closer to the West for economic reasons, how resilient would the Russia, China, North Korea trilateral alignment be? Christina?
Well, I think the trilateral alignment or alliance between the three countries is strategic and pragmatic. So if any conditions change, then that could affect that resilience of this trilateral relationships. I could propose three hypothetical scenarios. First is, as you mentioned, maybe China will move closer to the West for economic reasons. So that would require China to distance itself from Russia. And that distance would not just be on rhetorical level, but rather concrete actions. For example, showing criticisms, condemnations of what Russia is doing in Ukraine. China pledging to cut down its support. Fossil fuel purchase, for example, that probably would even have an impact on the resilience of the Russian regime. The second hypothetical scenario would be China moves closer to the US for economic reasons. So China and the US agree to tariff terms or some other kind of economic arrangements. And I think the outcome will be quite similar to the first scenario because US would definitely demand some kind of Chinese concession, cutting down support of Russia. And that would have the similar impact on Russia, its war, and the resilience of the regime. The third hypothetical scenario is slightly different. I think it might involve Russia moving closer to the United States. And in that hypothetical scenario, the removal of the sanctions, Russia would no longer need to depend that much on China, because now it has support from the United States. So I think in all these three scenarios, that would create a rift in the resilience of the trilateral relationship. It means the strategic nature or that need to depend on each other is no longer that necessary. So I think that would destabilize the relationship.
Okay, Siddharth, what do you think?
In my opinion, though, even if China ends up strengthening its relations with the EU, economic relations with the EU or the United States, I still see the trilateral not losing its prominence or value. China's declining relations with the West since 2018, 2019 also in a way strengthened North Korea's position. So if the West strengthens its economic relations with China, Chinese will not move away from North Korea just off the bat, because we live in an era of flux and churn in international politics, and it's unlikely that any state would radically alter its course. This is a very complex equation, and that will have to also be understood in such a way.
Christina, let's look at what channel might be likely to show evidence of a rift in that trilateral relationship, if any of those three scenarios that you sketched out, if they occur. Would it be perhaps something, maybe intelligence sharing or arms transfers or diplomatic cover support at the United Nations General Assembly, perhaps?
I think, indicators maybe probably not political, because I think political, it's easy to say in words, but arms transfer, like you mentioned, ammunition, the transfer of weapons and technological cooperation will reduce. Or energy purchase, like I mentioned, the fossil fuels. These concrete material activities will be the indicators.
Siddharth, do you agree?
I partially agree with Christina's assessment that I think more on the North Korean side than the Russian side, that I think China might adhere to certain sanctions on North Korea, or might nudge North Korea to make a deal faster. On the Russia-China angle, I do agree that if a certain deal is reached, naturally China may reduce its fossil fuel consumption, but at the current trajectory where the Russia-China relations is headed, we have three gas pipelines. There's almost 140 billion cubic meters of gas coming into China. So offsetting all that will take years. So in my opinion, the feasibility of this happening in the near future seems very unlikely. So that's where I would like to leave it.
Christina, how does or how could domestic economic pressure inside China alter the calculus in the short run versus perhaps 5 years down the track?
I think that's a good question, because the conventional assumption, I would say, is that domestic situations inside China is not doing well. So Xi Jinping and the CCP are definitely facing a lot of pressure because they are experiencing economic slowdown. With that, a lot of social problems. Even though, from outside it's difficult to tell, but there is definitely signs of rising societal pressures within China. But so far, even though there's a lot of challenges, but I would say Xi Jinping so far has maintained that tight control. And yes, there are news and speculations about him losing his grip within the party. But I think the military parade and other public showing, I think that suggests that Xi Jinping is still firmly in control over the party, within the party, and over China. So going back to your question, I would say no, probably not for now. As long as Xi Jinping is maintaining a tight control over China and within the party, these challenges that China is facing right now will have less likelihood of altering Xi Jinping and the CCP's strategy. And the strategy is, I think, maintain not just firm domestic control, but also the pursuit of the challenge to the global order. And I also want to add that I think for CCP, especially Xi Jinping, they tend to take a long-term perspective. Yes, their ultimate goal, or Xi Jinping's ultimate goal, is to have a change global order with China being the leader. But Xi Jinping is patient.
Siddharth, coming back to the war for a moment, if for whatever reason that were to end, that would mean that Russia would now have lesser need for munitions and men from North Korea. Wouldn't that affect the trilateral relationship in a negative way?
Yes, I would agree that it will impact trilateral relations in a negative way, particularly because the additional source of income that North Korea got from sending troops and weaponry would exhaust, and North Korea's leverage over getting advanced weapons or technology from Russia to modernize its military would also go down. So, from that perspective, the trilateral will be impacted because of that. But at the same time, I believe Russia is cognizant that North Korea is a negotiating pawn rather for Russia.
All right, thank you both very much.